Welcome back to Let's Get Real, a talk show for guys. My name is Michael Sharkey, aka Shark, Anthony Polakemi, aka Spanish.
Yeah.
So we started out, well, first of all, thank you, voiceover guy, for giving the phone numbers, but just for the sake of doing it, 727-579-1025, 800-771-1025. Again, this show is for you. So if you want to join in this conversation around purpose, which we're probably going to shift into a God talk.
Oh, yeah.
So if you want to join the conversation, or again, this is your show. Ultimately, this is a live interactive talk show for guys. And it's for you no matter what you're working on. So if it's something different than what we're talking about, that's fine. Totally dive into what you're doing. And as Spanish said a little while ago, and it's true, if you just need a space to vent, if you just need a space to unpack what you're working on, we will happily listen and give you that space. The other thing I want to tell you, the other thing I want to say out loud is we now have a podcast, which is great. So if you miss any part of the show, I'm going to take a couple of segments. I don't know, maybe a couple of segments, 3 segments every week. Try to get them uploaded by Sunday afternoon, Monday morning. So if you can't listen one week, just go to your favorite podcast app. I use Spotify or Apple, or I don't even think Google Podcasts is around anymore, but Odyssey or any of them. And just search Let's Get Real. Now, as you might imagine, there are a lot of shows called Let's Get Real. So,
what?
Yeah, I know, right? Let's Get Real, a talk show for guys, or Let's Get Real. You can put in my name, Michael Sharkey, or put in Spanish, and it'll come up. And the more you listen to it, the higher it goes up.
Yeah.
Please rate, review, subscribe, comment, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So purpose.
Yeah.
Diving back into this, and the conversation we're having today is about what, I guess finding your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Life is really, 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 really challenging and difficult. It's just hard regardless.
Yeah.
But it is compounded in its difficulty if you go in a direction that is not good. It just feels wrong. So I had an experience a couple of weeks ago. The company that I work with, they're based out of Franklin, Tennessee, just south of Nashville. And we have a couple of high-end clients. And I was not raised in the church. I was very intentionally not raised in a religious environment.
Lucky.
And my dad is a fallen away Catholic, and he literally said, "I will not."
Yeah.
I would go to church with friends, and it was like I was doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just not my vibe. I can't quote the Bible. I've never read the Bible.
Really?
Yeah, I don't.
Man.
I have one.
Yeah.
I mean, I've opened it up. Beginning of Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast album, they quote Revelations. So I opened up to look at that. What do you earth? So anyway, but that's not my thing. However, I do think that there is, to say why God put us here. I genuinely think in the conversation of purpose, there's a reason for our existence. My reason for existence, your reason for existence, others, there's a reason there. And the closer you can get to that, the easier life comes. So I'm at this meeting, and the owner of the company decides to do an exercise with all of us in a room. And it's about, and basically in the way he positioned it, I thought was really brilliant. He said, look, we're going to have some challenging conversations today around this company and around the business. And they're trying to, get out of a situation or whatever. And he said, and I was the only one in the room that fell into the category of not raised around church. Everybody else was quoting scripture and all sorts of stuff. And he said, listen, before we start, let's ask God not only what he wants from us today. And I always feel weird. God is not a he. God is not a she. Mm-hmm. God is
genderless, yes. Sexless, yeah.
But that's how we refer to God. But the way he phrased it was well, let's ask God. And he said, so he wrote up on the board, and it was a really cool exercise because he wrote up on the board, and then we all went into separate rooms to answer this. But the questions were, what's blocking us from receiving everything you have for us today? That's the question of God. What do we need to receive, and what is our own crap that's getting in the way of us doing that? And then who do you, speaking to God, who do you say I am? So I went in and I took my journal and I went into another room. Now, again, the way the semantics that I would tend to use would be source, universe, higher self, higher wisdom. I tend to think we're talking about the same thing here.
Yeah, for sure.
We're all pointing in the same direction.
Absolutely.
And I had a moment where I was journaling, and I've shared this with you before, is that there are times when I journal where I'm not the one writing.
Yeah.
And I had a moment, and I realized what was blocking me, and I share it here because I think this is a struggle of mine, is about faith. Faith in, whether you call it God, universe, or whatever, but faith in the direction. So I'm writing in my journal, and I should have brought my journal because it would have made this maybe more captivating or more boring. I don't even know. But again, man, we're just having a conversation about God. But I wrote, and I had this moment where I wasn't writing, but it was basically like I'm here, and it ended with trust me, trust me, trust me. And I kind of looked, I sat up from my journal, and I was like, whoa, and it was more about trust the process, trust in this. In this situation, and the environment that I was in was around, what does God want from us today? Who am I in God's eyes? What is my purpose? And it's something that I realized that even as much as we can talk about it, it's like, oh, and all that stuff, is you still have to have faith.
Oh, yeah.
You've got to have faith that the direction you're going, in the direction of your highest excitement, not really worried about the outcome, but you got to have faith that that's going to work. And I can understand from my own life and lived experience that sometimes that's hard.
Oh, yeah. It's very challenging, especially when that voice inside of your head is super negative, and the majority of experiences you've had in your life are negative. It becomes probably the hardest challenge. It was the hardest challenge in my life, was to just let go and have faith in God and the universe that things were going to be okay. Because I grew up Catholic, and I went to Catholic school all through high school.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't believe in God for my entire life. Even growing up Catholic, I read the Bible.
You didn't believe?
I did not. Yeah, I didn't believe in God. I did Stations of the Cross, learned about Jesus. Yeah, I didn't believe in God because I always was of the mindset, well, if there was a God, why is everything so terrible?
Right.
If he's here and he listens, how can, the usual thing that you hear people say, how do babies die, and, terrible things happen.
So much pain in the world.
Genocide. Yeah. But then, starting last year, when I started to meditate, and after everything that I started to go through, and I really started sitting with who I was, I just had this experience one day where I was meditating, and it just hit me, and I was like, oh, the whole purpose of God or source is to experience an infinite number of individual realities at the same time, and to wring out every drop that God or the universe can through our eyes. So when it comes to purpose, or what your purpose is in this life, it's not, I always hear people say, oh, I have a calling from God. I don't really like to say that. I am of the mindset of God or the universe wants to experience a specific journey through you. And as soon as you get in tune with what that journey is, life maybe won't get easier, but all of the things that come with life will fall into place, because now you are in line with the universe and God, which is in each one of us. And when you start to walk that path, things do change. And I didn't believe any of this until about a year ago. And now I totally believe in God. I pray all the time, talk to God when I meditate. One of my favorite prayers to say in the morning is, God, no matter, and I learned this from an opera singer, an old opera singer, this woman, and the prayer is, God, no matter what it is that you send at me today, whether it be good or bad, it doesn't matter, as long as you grant me the strength to overcome it. And I'll say that prayer, and then I'll say, whatever my day is, I surrender it to you. I know you know my path better than I do. I trust the journey. I trust the process. I believe in divine timing. I know I just have to be patient, and that, the truth is, as long as I wake up, that was all I had to do, was wake up, and now everything else is a blessing because I'm alive, and God gets to experience, or the universe gets to experience my specific journey through my eyes. And he's always been there. And I didn't really even used to believe that he was always there until I was in a super dark place. And all of a sudden, one evening when things were not going well and my body was in excruciating pain, and I was isolated and I didn't have anybody to talk to, all of a sudden I just got like this warm feeling from in my heart, and it just started to radiate throughout my body. And I was like, oh, that's what God or the universe is. It's that unconditional love that I never gave myself because I didn't feel worthy of it, because, I don't feel that the universe or God judges anything. It's all supposed to be this way because the experiences that we accrue throughout our life are all experiences that God or the universe wants to have through our eyes. And they're not going to be great all the time, but in the bad times is when you can really connect with God and the universe. And it's kind of like that push to rejoin that unconditional love that we're all given from the moment we're born.
Yeah.
So why not embrace it?
Did you ever read Conversations with God?
I love that book. Yeah, that's a good book.
That book, for me, because I read it about 3 years ago, and that book, that was truly one of the books that I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And I know that there's like it's weird because I'll say this also. There was a time not that long ago, probably about 5 years ago, that I could not have had this conversation.
Yeah.
I could not have had this conversation.
It was a year ago for me.
Yeah. I would have said, and it's very possible that someone's listening right now having the thought I would have had 5 years ago, which is like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. This is idiotic.
I get it. Yeah. Just be open to it. But I understand that mindset 100%.
Yeah. And so much so, this is interesting. I told you that I officiate beach weddings.
Mm-hmm.
It's my number one side hustle. And so when you marry someone, you have to sign their license to officially marry them.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I witnessed them both say I do, and then I signed that they said I do. So there's a box where I have to put my name, and I have to write ordained minister, because I am actually an ordained minister.
Awesome.
And for the longest time, I wouldn't write that because I was like, I'm not a minister, even though I had to get that. It's a very simple certification, but I was very much like, no, that's silly.
Yeah.
And I would write like registered officiant until finally the company that I do these beach weddings for was like, dude, you're a minister. Okay. Get right with God. Okay. Because you're a minister, because you're literally jeopardizing these people's ability to actually get married because you don't want to write ordained minister. That's where I was like 5 years ago. And then when I read Conversations with God, I actually tried to read it like, I don't know, 10 years ago. And I was like, this is silly.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because now it doesn't trigger me at all. Like the word God doesn't trigger me, even though, again, if I'm having a conversation with you and I'll say, I will probably lean into higher self, higher wisdom, source.
Universe is the word I tend to use.
Universe. Yeah. But I think, back to the conversation around purpose is paying attention to that. And paying attention to the things that don't light you up.
Yeah.
Paying attention to the things that don't get you excited. When we were talking about this in the first segment, I started thinking about when I was a kid, when I was like 14, maybe even younger, like 10, 11. I used to record myself back in the old days, we had a boombox and you drop a cassette in, you play record, and and I would record myself talking. And me and my buddies would do that, and it was fun. We'd tell like really dirty jokes and listen back to it and that sort of thing.
Make phone calls.
Totally, absolutely, it was the best. But I would do that. And then the little town I grew up in, North Florida, had a little teeny radio station, and my dad owned the newspaper, so he knew that he owned the newspaper, so and so owned the radio station. And they would do like cross promotions and stuff, and I would go up to the radio station. Man, I was like, 11 years old, 12 years old. And I walk into a radio station for the first time. And dude, that's it. That was so clear to me. That's the only thing I wanted to do with my life, was talk on the radio. Like, I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And I was so driven by it. I was so passionate about it. Like, I'd call I was the guy that would, or the kid that would call the radio station. I was the kid that I used to be so annoyed at when I was on 97X all the time. Like, dude, go find. But I was that kid. I would just like, I could not get enough of that.
Yeah.
And that ultimately led me to getting my first job, making $3.35 an hour, dog, at a radio station in Gainesville, when I was 16. But I was doing free stuff for them for like a year and a half before that. And it's all I wanted to do. And the reason why I bring that up around the conversation of purpose is because that feeling, and we've talked about the importance of understanding feeling, the energy of that. And that feeling, man, like, it never left. I mean, maybe it left whenever I decided to walk away, because it was replaced by the feeling of wanting to be a father to my children, which is, I think, understandable. But I was like it was like a drug.
Yeah.
It was,
I get that.
It was like a drug. I was like, man, I just wanted to do the thing I'm doing literally right now in this moment. And it's all I ever wanted. And now, many, 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 many years later, I remember that feeling, and I search that feeling, that I know if I feel that thing, and I felt that thing when I was like, hey man, let's do this show on the bone, like where we talk about God and purpose, that I'm going in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to school. Well, when I was a kid, it's funny. When I was a kid, I remember going to school with my dad, and he used to listen to Y100, and it was Footy and the Chicks at Six was in South Florida. And we would listen, and I always,
radio. It was so awesome.
Yeah. And I remember listening and just being enthralled in the fact that, oh my God, this guy is hanging out with a bunch of girls and they're having a blast. And me and my dad are laughing together. And it was such a great time. And I never forgot that feeling. And then I grew up and I went to college, and I was going to school to be a dentist, which is what the path that my parents wanted me to go on: doctor, engineer, or science. And something just happened. I started listening, because I never listened to talk radio. I remember finding The Bone, and I remember it was the Cowhead show at the time.
Yep.
And I started listening, and all of a sudden I remembered that feeling from when I was a kid. And I couldn't drop it. It was very much like a drug. Like, I started to seek it out every day at 3:00. I needed to listen. And then I was like, why am I not? I just had that thought, why am I not pursuing this? Like, what am I doing? I'm going to be miserable being a dentist. I'm always going to regret not pursuing that feeling. So I called up one day, demanded to be the intern. The rest is history in that regard. And yeah, now I very much search out that feeling. And I've discovered that through meditation and sitting with myself and really focusing on what those different feelings are in my body and in my heart.
Yes.
It is very easy to follow that throughout my daily life, which has helped me a lot to get rid of some of my substance abuse issues and to find a very nice balance of when it's time to, hang out and do those things, or to sit and read by myself, or to go watch a sunrise in my hammock, any of that stuff, which, I want more people to experience that, because I know life gets busy and it's super easy to wake up, do your thing. If you have a family, and then by the time you go to sleep, you're like, I don't even know where the day went. Right. And I don't know. I don't know how to say it. It's not that it makes me sad, but I know that more people deserve happiness in their daily life. And if I can help with that at all, that lights me up.
Yeah. There was a moment in the last year that it was surprisingly profound in the most unexpected places. Do you know who Oliver Anthony is?
The name sounds familiar. Is that the singer?
Yeah. He's the guy that did that Richmond, north of Richmond. Surprisingly interesting interview is when Oliver Anthony was on with Joe Rogan. And like I would have never like here's a country. I don't even like country music. So here's a country singer. That is a good song though.
Yeah.
And I was listening. I don't listen to every Joe Rogan episode, but I do like Joe. And which we should talk about the Terrence Howard.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Oliver Anthony is on there, and he's telling his story about the way he stated it was, I gave everything up to God. That's how he phrased it.
Surrender.
He surrendered. And he was, I forget the exact story because it's been a few months since I listened to it, but he had injured his back at work. Now here's a guy, now keep in mind, here's a guy who was like doing some sort of construction or something like that in West Virginia. So if you think about like, there's no time for purpose.
Yeah.
There's no time for that. Like, it's like, I just got to pay the bills. I just got to work. And so many of us lock into that mindset, and I get it. Anyway, he's sharing the story about how he was abusing drugs, he was abusing alcohol, and he just quit. And it was part of one of my inspirations for giving up alcohol and drugs for 90 days. But he literally said, I gave it up to God. And he got a call like a week later, back to Synchronicities and Signs, and he got clear on it, clear on his feeling, clear on, here we are, just dudes talking about feelings. But he got clear on feeling that thing inside. And it was, in West Virginia, I think it's called Radio West Virginia. It's pretty popular in West Virginia.
Yeah.
And they would go out into the woods and record music.
That's cool.
For like, it's like a local radio show for West Virginia. And he, that morning was like, he had a couple other songs he wanted to record. He was recording with a dude from Radio West Virginia. And that morning he was like, yeah, I kind of got this half-baked idea of a song called Richmond, North of Richmond. And he wrote a few verses that morning, and they're out in the middle of the woods, literally recording this song on an iPhone. And he records this song. And and it felt right to him.
Yeah.
He was trusting that instinct. He was trusting that feeling. He felt right. And then it was like literally a month later. It became the fastest. It was the only song I think I forget the exact. It was like the only song in the history of streaming to debut at #1. So think about that. You've got everybody from Taylor Swift to Billie Eilish to Drake. Can't do it. But here's
Oliver Anthony.
Here's this dude.
Yeah.
Here's this dude. So let me give out the phone numbers. And I love sharing that story.
That's a good story.
That's an episode worth listening to.
Can I give you my favorite Bible quote before you did this, do the phone number?
Sure.
So it's Isaiah. It's from the book of Isaiah. And the quote is, "And I heard the voice of the Lord, and he said, 'Whom shall go forth for us, and whom shall I send?' And I replied, 'Here am I, send me.'" I love that quote.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Didn't think we were ever going to quote the Bible on the show, but here we are.
Yeah.
Our phone number. And again, if you want to join us in this conversation, great. I just want to say again, this show is for you, with whatever you're working on, whatever you're struggling with. We can talk about that, or we can talk about God. 727-579-1025, 800-771-1025. It's Let's Get Real on 1025 The Bone.
And you thought we couldn't talk for 20 minutes.